Take it away, John.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Paul. I am a data practitioner for about 30 years, and I've had the opportunity to work with Eric Broda for the last decade and a half, at least, on various topics, everything from master data management, APIs, and data science, and most recently around data mesh. And so I'll be the moderator for this session and the other sessions that Paul mentioned before. My background is in data, and I'm here to really allow us all to have fun asking questions of the authors of data implementing data mesh. I don't know if you can see that. I just received my copy yesterday, and that's a little bit about me. But the two folks we want to hear from are JGP or Jean-Georges Perrin and Eric Broda, the two authors of this book. So I'll throw to Jean-Georges to start.
Yeah, so thank you. We're promoting our new book. Oh, I'm sorry, it's this one. Uh, so yeah, my name is Jean-Georges Perrin, or yeah, it's pretty difficult for a lot of friends around here, so I go very often by JGP. Um, I've been passionate about data for a long time, and but really was more like a software engineer, and I often say that I'm a software engineer, but I self-identify as a data engineer. And yeah, we just finished this awesome journey with Eric about writing the book, and it was just, it was just grand. So yeah.
I guess my turn. Eric Broda out of Toronto, Canada, 35 years plus in the technology and data industry, as John mentioned. Had the pleasure of working with John for about 15 of those years. Been an executive at large banks and insurance companies, written many articles on data mesh and a variety of other topics, and really looking forward to talking about the book that JGP and myself have authored. So back to you, John.
Okay, so that's great, guys. These sessions, we're trying to make them feel like you're having a conversation with friends. So, if you've got a good joke or you have a question you want to throw to me to throw to the authors, please feel free to do that. I just love talking to software engineers and data engineers at the same time. My background is data architecture, data engineering, and the more and more time I spend in the community, uh, especially here in San Francisco, the domain-driven design community, the more I realize software engineers and data engineers, we do a lot of similar stuff, but we think about things very differently a lot of ways. And what you do for code might be different than what you do for data engineering. And so, I love your background, Jean-Georges. So, what got you inspired to put this on paper and create a book that, the implementing data mesh book?
So I've got and I don't want to speak for Eric, but I think we both have a tremendous amount of respect for what Jean-Marc did in her book. And But there was something missing. And there was, when I was at PayPal, we studied it back and back, from cover to cover. We I set up a book club around it, because I wanted to make sure that all the teams, when we were implementing data mesh, was really, up to speed and things like that. So we really spent an enormous amount of time reading this book, but sorry, but it was missing something, and the thing it was missing was, I think, the next phase. Okay, so there was a lot of principles, there was a lot of concept explained, but it was missing a little bit of architecture. It was missing a little bit of implementation. It was missing a lot about even if it mentions the socio technical, more the socio aspect of the socio technical platform. So I feel like, despite this being a great book and a great concept she introduced, we were missing a little bit all the implementation part, all the hands-on part, all the all the feedback that both Eric and I on different projects had gathered when we implemented data mesh. And I think that was kind of a little bit the combo that was interesting, is that Eric and I don't always have the same view on things. We didn't fight, and we're still friends after writing a book. Okay, so which our editor told us it's not that common. Okay, but it's just because Eric is a super nice guy and he's Canadian, so he's genetically programmed to be nice with me. So not giving me an excuse to being more of an asshole, but anyway, no, but we had yeah, so that was kind of the thing, and I wrote a book a few years ago called Spark in Action at Manning, and it was a massive 600-page 3 years alone venture, and I kind of said after that, oh, I don't want to write a book alone, and so it was just fantastic to actually do it with Eric, because he's a great guy.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. When a lot of us read Zamek's book, which I also have here, uh, we bookmarked specific pages. All of the folks in my community, data community, spent a lot of the time talking about it, but there wasn't a lot of how to. And, as a reformed management consultant myself, who prefers to call himself a data architect or engineer, I just felt that a lot of what you guys have both put in the book around how to conceive of the teams, how to think about the organizational transformation and the roadmap. Like, dude, what's the journey to get from here to there? I really think that's very powerful stuff. And that's in the third section of the book. So um, and in the second section of the book, and I'll just, for people that haven't read it yet, I would say that all of the concepts around data quality and around the data contracts and not my words, but the telemetry around the products, that's really insightful to literally see API endpoint. And it lets people think differently about data products than maybe tables and databases. And I know I'm taking some of the words that Eric and I always discuss as he was going through and writing all of his pieces. So, Eric, same question to you. I mean, tell me about your inspiration to actually put all this stuff on paper and create a book. Who reads books now? And the a lot of us, but anyway, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I think in general, the things that you and JGP mentioned around kind of bringing it to life are crucial. I remember when I started down my data mesh journey, and we ended up doing our very first data product, and then getting ready for our second. We found that there's what Zamek said, a socio-technical capability. We knew the technical stuff, but realized the hardest and the heaviest lifting parts were the socio part, the organizational stuff, the team stuff. How do you actually go from more, predominantly centralized to a little bit less centralized, more federated, is probably one of the toughest parts of the journey. So what I wanted to do when I did this is I wanted to bring all that theory, although there's a lot of practical advice in Zemek's book. I don't want to characterize it the wrong way, but I wanted to bring the theory to life. I wanted to inject a little bit of what I thought was the secret sauce, the power that data mesh actually brings, and capture that. And I did. I started with actually articles, and I wrote about 20 to 25. I can't remember the final number. The majority of which were on data mesh and related topics, trying to bring some of my expertise to the community. And then what I found is the articles were a little bit disjointed. You learn along the way. And then when JGP invited me to work on this book together, I said yes immediately. Of course, JGP said, you know what you're saying yes to. First off, you're working with JGP. I said, that's an honor, by the way. Secondly, he said, it's actually a lot harder than you think. It's a lot longer. It's going to take a lot more process. First off, he was right. But the second thing he didn't mention was has to be a lot of fun. And I made a new friend along the way. So that's my story anyway.
Yeah, well, so the topic here is making data agile. Uh, and so, let's talk about that. Because Agile has been around and it means so many things to so many folks. What do you guys want us to take away from that statement, making data agile? What does that mean to you?
Well,
I
I can
can,
start on this one.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you mentioned rightly, John, that Agile, at least as it applies to software engineering, has been around for a long, long time. Start with the Agile Manifesto. But if I were to boil it all down, and by the way, I think Agile has the whole notion of Agile, the practices, et cetera, have literally changed the way we deliver software. Is Agile perfect? No, it's not. But it has changed to the better, in my opinion, strongly better, the way we actually deliver software. But the principles, if I were to boil them all down, and I know you lose something as you boil these things down to smaller sound bites, but what it tried to say was if we move away from the monolithic software requirements process, the monolithic team, and break it into smaller parts, we would get better, faster, and ultimately, as a result of being faster, cheaper also. And we found that to be actually true. So our whole notion here is that we're bringing the same practices around Agile, the federated organization, the federated or distributed architecture, the federated governance, the self-serve principles. We're bringing those Agile principles in many respects to data. And by bringing those practices to data, we'd like to think, and we think with data mesh, you're seeing this, you're starting to see you're becoming better, faster, and like I said, ultimately cheaper as a result of distributing the decision making to the most appropriate group in the organization, typically relatively low. We in data mesh terminology would be the data product team, but you're putting the onus on decision making to the part of the organization that understands the data the best. And then you're putting a boundary around it so that they actually have the ability to control their environment, make decisions, and be accountable for those decisions. So effectively, what we're doing is we're bringing agile practices to the data, and by doing that, we're enabling faster decision making, faster time to market, and like I said earlier, delegating ownership and decision making to those closest to the data. I mean, what more would you actually want?
So that's what your point of view. And what I love about the style of both of you, the authors that I'm interviewing, is that you both bring different aspects to the same question. So, Jean-Georges, would you was there something about making data agile that stands out to you that you would say, here's what I mean, and here's a way to think about it differently than maybe folks that are just sort of new to what does it mean?
I came a bit to a realization that um agile was badly named or badly used in some organization. Okay, so I remember when I joined a Fortune 500 here in the US, where we they had a central data team, and and they told us, yeah, we're agile. We divide our work in sprints,
Yeah,
and that was it.
yeah.
Um, so it was, it's very difficult then to convince people that they're actually not doing exactly the right thing, because it's not about doing waterfall in 2 weeks. It's about really being agile. And one thing that I really think the data world needs more is product thinking. Okay, so it's really uh, you call it as you want. Okay, data as a product, data product, but the entire idea is that you're thinking that you are producing products. You are not anymore in a project mode. You are not thinking about, oh, a sprint is 2 weeks and that's going to be my mini waterfall. You're building a product, and the product evolves. A product has a life cycle, and that's, I think, that is, I wouldn't say I'm on a mission to make sure that people understand that, but more than, and that's because it is enabled by Agile. Okay, Agile in this situation is the enabler for this product thinking. And I think this is, if there's only one thing that people in the data world should I would advise them, is really product thinking. It
Okay,
solves
so
so much problems.
tell us a little bit about what are some examples of data products? Because that section of the book, what I love about the book is you guys provide some practical examples. There's a fictitious company based on real work that Eric has done, Climate Quantum, where you talk about data products quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, I think talking about data products and data contracts, data mesh, just sort of build a mental model for us to sort of take those three words, data products, data contracts, data mesh. How do you see them fitting together?
I have a, I wouldn't say I have a vision, but I see this kind of a triptych. Okay, so or this trilogy in a way. Okay, so like Star Wars. You're just, you start with your data contracts. That's kind of the easiest way to get something. And you get value very quickly. Okay, and that's also what Agile is bringing, is get value quickly. We're not embarking on a snowflake migration and we get result in 3 years. Okay, we want result in the next 3 months. And not picking on snowflake. Okay, it could be, could be any other
No,
redshift,
I spent
whatever.
2 years at Snowflake. Really love the product.
So I still want to have friends
Expensive.
in the business. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But the idea is, you start with the data contract. Okay. And the data contract already give value. Like, you start to enhance the trust you have in your data. Okay. And by doing that, then you realize that, okay, I need to combine these data products, these data contracts, because they're actually representing something very similar, which is a data product. Okay. And then you realize that, oh, I've got plenty of those data products popping out everywhere. So how do I organize them together? That's where data mesh is coming in. Okay. So you've got really this crescendo, this this additional value you get at every steps. Okay. And I'm just thinking about a company I visited with Scott back in January in Spain, and they had at that time 800 data products, and their growth was 100 a month. Okay, so when you're thinking about this space, okay, it's, you've got to think about, the next step. Okay, so otherwise you're just going to get back to a model where you're crawling under the number of tables or pipelines you have.
Now, did you say 800 data products and they were adding 100 additional products every month, or
Yep.
did I mishear? Wow.
Yep.
That just boggles the mind. I've seen complex data platform environments with thousands, tens of thousands of tables, but one would think this idea of a product would allow you to have a lot less or a lot less, or it just doesn't feel or it feels like something that I haven't experienced myself, where you get into the hundreds or thousands of data products. It seems like a busy marketplace. Where do I know
It,
where to go?
it is, and I don't want to prevent Eric from talking. Okay, but the thing is, just on this one quickly, it is huge. But I think it's a side effect on one of the principle, which is the self-service data platform. Okay, you let your user do things. Okay, you've got to do that in a controlled environment, but the creation of a data product, that's for them, okay. So let's them live the life a little bit, and then we can guide them, okay. And I think that's where there's a lot of potential after, because of the richness of the environment, the richness of the metadata that we're actually collecting as part of the data product, and part of this isolation that the data product is providing, that we can then more easily combine them, make recommendation, and tell, hey, John, you're actually using a data product that is very, very similar to the one that Eric is using. Let's merge them in the next iteration or something. And the next iteration, that's where you're going back to the product thinking, right? Otherwise, in a traditional world with data sets, it's not possible, because a data set is kind of a finite entity that never evolves.
Right. I can think of people just creating tables whenever they need them and not really thinking about a more holistic view of it. Yeah. So, Eric, did you want to add anything to that,
Yeah,
or
yeah. I
throw
think
it
I think
over?
no. Yeah, I'll give you a quick. I always have something to add, I suppose. John knows that. I think there's kind of six concepts that you try and bring together with data mesh. Obviously, first off, data mesh is the core one, the umbrella. And that's the backbone that allows concept number one, data products, the quantum, if you will, of data mesh, the unit of work, the boundary. The data mesh actually is the ecosystem of data products. So it brings data products into the picture, lets you design as a product. Data contracts bind those data products together in a consistent, published, well-established, well-known way. The thing we haven't really talked about is if you have 800, for example, data products, you also need to have a window into those data products. So we have a marketplace that lets you actually find them, but also, so as a consumer, it helps you find them, but as a publisher, it helps you publish them easy. It's all, the spirit of this is all self-serve. Then you have endpoints that are implementation vehicles for the contracts and other components. And then the last piece of the puzzle, which allows you to get to the 800, I suppose, is this notion of a factory. If you have standard, well-known data products with standard, well-known contracts, you effectively have a template for building data products at scale. Well, that's the factory, and that's the other concept that we bring to life in the book. These are the technical concepts, by the way. The organizational side we can talk about a little bit later. But if you have those 4 or 5, 6 concepts and have those bound together effectively, then you can start to build data products at the scale that JGP mentioned. And that's where I see organizations just starting to realize that there's it's the more you standardize, the more you introduce contracts, that's where you start to get the benefits of speed and agility. And that's where it really comes to fruition.
Well, so this is important because I really think that when you guys talk about the mesh, the products, and then the contracts that bind them, the thing that stood out to me was this idea of a data contract. And you talk about it quite a bit in the book, and you refer to some open standards. And I'd love for you to talk about that. But before you do, one of the bits of feedback I've gotten from every data engineer I've talked to about this, I say, listen, if you're going to do something, where do you start? And so, and so I think there is a prerequisite for anybody going on the journey to have some level of DevOps in place, this ability to just insert a contract in a code base or just sort of manage it. So teach me, teach me how I can think about these contracts. And and maybe it's wrong to try to just insert them in my pipelines, but that's what I was trying to do. So teach me how you think about the need for a DevOps pipeline and the ability to rapidly make changes, and bringing contracts in is something I think a lot of us would like to do because we see it as a very powerful control mechanism. So
I think that there's a bit of a, what I'm saying is that, okay, it may sound like I'm showing off a little bit, but I don't see a lot of people with a complete vision of the data contract product on mesh. Okay, uh, I see a lot of people using data contract for data quality,
yeah,
and it's a good use case, but it's really not the only one. Um, and I'm also seeing a lot of people using data products for a super interface on top of their Terraform to generate. Okay, I'm taking all this resource description I have in my data product, and I'm feeding my Terraform to actually, create and manage my environment. Both use cases are great,
Yeah.
but they are very sh- almost shallow compared to the breadth of what you can be doing. Okay. Um, I've been discussing with people that are thinking about using data contracts to make sure that, and data product and having subscribers and make sure that they are actually matching their RBAC system and their AD system. I've got people thinking that observability is part of the data contract, and I think actually we've got one on the in the audience. Taras is with us. We've got we've got there's so much more that you can do, but you've got to open your mind to the possibilities, and I think that's something we try to address at least in the book. And especially with this notion of data QoS we are introducing as well, data quality of service. So I think this is beyond just the idea of data quality or data SLAs. It's really about, I think my core belief is that it's about trusting. Okay, it's really about trusting the data. What do we do as data engineers to increase the trust our users have in data?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And I think that's why when I first heard the term data contract, I immediately went to quality, right? Data quality, because I thought, wait, we all know we need it. We all know there should be boundary conditions on data that's going from one system to another, and that should be controlled through a contract. And so I thought data quality as the first piece of it. But you're right, observability and so many other, and discovery. There's so many other things that you guys talk about in the book around data contracts and how to think about those in the context of a product. So that was helpful for me. And folks, if you have questions, I know we've got a chat here that we're going to see some questions if you've got them. Otherwise, I'm going to just keep having fun with the guys asking them questions.
Free
But
consulting.
yeah, no, I need I need you guys to help me with all the answers to my clients' questions because I'm really just sitting there. I'm thinking, can data teams are the ones that are always overloaded, right? They never have enough time to meet all of their customer requirements. They're always sort of wishing they had time to clean up tech debt, before they do something new. And so I think when we think about agile data, I think really helping us, the community, learn how others have gotten started, whether it's bottoms up or top down or through the middle. I think that your thoughts on that from both of your perspective would be really interesting. I think to me and
Yeah, yeah, I can start in this one. I just wanted to come back to the data contract question and comment from JGP. The whole notion of data contracts or contracts in general, obviously, are quite old. But they're manifested, I think, in something everybody kind of understands. In the real world, we have supply chains. Okay, and as things go from one, this whether it's on a truck or whatever, a product goes from vendor A to vendor B and ultimately the customer. The transit between the two is very well defined in the real world. Okay.
yeah,
And that's why we can get stuff from, Asia or, into Canada from the US. We get them reliably. And usually the order is actually pretty good because we've implemented contracts. Those contracts say, among other things, what is in that product and what should it look like. So the metadata. It also says, by the way, it needs to be there in 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever the case may be. So, and then you can actually check on your order, FedEx order for whatever the case. So the whole notion of not just the metadata, but the whole observability, the quality of service all those are concepts that are live and well in the real world every single day. And what we've done is in our book, JGP, as an expert in data contracts, wrote most of that chapter. We show that the concept that we've talked about in the real world can be applied to immense benefit in the data world. And we're just starting to see the power of data contracts. And that's why we spent a fair amount of time writing about that and injecting it throughout the entire book as a core concept and fundamental capability. I want to come back now to your. Sorry, John, did you have a follow-up
Well,
question?
yeah, I just noticed that Terrace had asked a good
Oh,
question, and I kind of want to preempt my question because this is for all of us in the community. So let's start talking about not just the pros, what are all the benefits of, but some of the cons of using Agile within data mesh and the data sharing context. Uh, you know, not everything is should be seen through rose-colored glasses.
Why?
Well,
I think that JGP, that means you get to answer the question first.
Okay, okay. I get the hard one now. Honestly, I don't see really anything against agile. Okay, whether it's in software engineering or in data engineering, um, you can apply all those. It's not the same rules. Okay, so when you're and as I was saying, I was trained, I was almost say I was born as a software engineer, and then I came to the data world. But the thing is, it's not the same agile. Okay, like it's not agile version 1, agile version 2. It's a different kind of agile because data is a different topic than just purely software. Um, but I don't see maybe I think it's less mature in data than it is in software. You've got things like safe that is really awesome for software. It's not yet there for data. We don't have the same maturity, but that said, the thing is, I don't see a risk. I don't see a drawback. I don't see some things that I would not do thinking agile in the data world. Okay, yeah.
well,
Sorry, Taras.
if you have a better or not a better, but a more provocative question, please don't hesitate to ask again if we can get some cons out of these guys.
Yeah.
Uh, did you want
Oh,
to say anything about that?
yeah. Yeah. I think the cons are probably more lessons learned, I suppose, along the journey.
Yeah,
So first off, most data people are technical people.
yeah,
And that usually means we play in the backyard that we feel most safe. So we end up starting with the technical capability around data mesh or data products and data contracts. And I think that is okay to start an experiment. But the thing that we found is if you plow down the technical path, what you find very quickly, you run into the organizational fence that you have to hop. And that is not trivial and not simple. In fact, that fence can be, this analogy is wearing thin, by the way, but the fence can be very high and you may need to have some significant athletic capability to cross over it. Don't forget the technical stuff. If you start with just tech, you will highly likely fail. Second thing
yeah.
is if your organization is predominantly centralized, I'll use the example of perhaps the most centralized organization, the Army or the Navy, very, very top down for perhaps very good reasons. If you try and force fit a federated structure onto a highly centralized organization, you may have some challenges. That being said, there's very few organizations like the Army or the Navy that are that centralized that you can't find a place to go. The third one is Conway's law tends to inject itself. Conway's law says your systems and technology and your data will follow the organizational structure within your company. So what that means is if you don't recognize that and design your data products within the span of authority of those decision makers, those organizations, then you're probably you're running into the wind as opposed to having the wind at your back. What you're trying to do is change not only the organization but the culture of decision making. So I'll give you a very simple example. I've talked to many folks during my travels where they say, well, there should be a customer data product. First off, that customer domain is massive. The
Yeah.
second thing, the practical thing is the comment is, well, we have customers in the UK, some in Thailand, some in Vietnam, some in China, some in North America. How do we actually address that? Well, some people try and create what I call the intergalactic data product. That usually doesn't work very well. Usually fails relatively quickly. Rather, the enterprise architecture, the data architecture view from a logical perspective may say that all customers have some common attributes. But when you implement data products, you have to recognize that data products are the implementation unit in many respects. You typically address that broad customer domain by breaking into smaller units. So if the decision-making structure for the organization is, I have different geographies, then you likely will have a customer data product in the UK, one in Thailand, one in Vietnam, et cetera. So you need to think about the practical aspects of what can be actually done in an organization and how do you most effectively achieve that? And that's the key.
Well, okay. I'm going to summarize a number of the things you said, Eric, as being around the organization related to the socio-technical aspect of change management and you can't think of this only as a technical project. So me as a bottoms-up engineer trying to introduce contracts uh, isn't necessarily going to have the top-down support. So Ariel asks a great questions about organization again, and it's about the definition of a data product and types of data products, and the experience that they've faced is that how do you get away from this endless debate of what is a data product so you can create consensus and momentum? Uh, that's from Ariel.
How about I start with this one, then JGP can add some commentary, I suppose. So I think the first question that we always get is, I love this concept. Where do we start? There's never a pre-canned answer, but there's some commonality to this. So the very first one is you need to recognize you're not building a data mesh first. You're building data products. And then you may build a second one and bind them with data contracts. And eventually you find that you need a common mechanism to actually bind these things together, a backbone, maybe a marketplace to find them and publish them. So the first thing is to ask yourself is, where is my very first data product going to be? And therein lies the first key to success. The very first data product that you have should be one that has very clearly identified business value. And then you have to deliver that data product to realize the promise that you've made to the business sponsor. But once you've done that, what you have is you have some momentum, you've done something real, but you have a business sponsor who is now your best publicist, your best advertiser. So the first success with your first one actually is the momentum that allows you to get the second and the third and the fourth. Now, there's a lot of nuance between that, but that's been my approach, and it has been the way to drive incremental success into big success.
So I just want to do a time check. It's 41 minutes after the hour. We still have some time for more questions. I see three have just come in. So would you like to take another question, or Jean-Georges, would you like to opine about getting?
Yeah, I'll be super brief on what on this one. One of the first question I get is when you tell what a data mesh is, okay, well, what an implementation of data mesh is, and the four principles that Jamak addicted, uh, one of the very first question is, what's a domain? And uh, and and um, and I think that I've evolved a little bit my position from saying that we need to have this. It's better if it's domain centric, but then after you've got to argue with the enterprise architect, with the practitioners, and as Eric was saying, a customer across an organization might even across the same organization is going to be completely different from I always kind of think about the elephant in the black room and the four blind people with the elephant. Okay, when he's touching the tail, when he's touching the nose, the trunk, when he's touching the feet, etc. It's all an elephant, but they have different perspective on it. So I really think that we need to think a little bit differently about the data product and not align them to a domain, but align them more towards a use case. It's okay. I think it's okay. Okay. Because once more, you're in a product thinking mode. Okay. So it means that you can evolve your product towards maybe a domain. Okay. But the thing is, if you start saying, okay, if you're going to spend months trying to figure out what is actually the scope of my data product, you've lost it. Okay. And as Eric just said, look for the value, deliver to the value, be fast, be nimble. Okay. And I'm not saying be agile because I try to avoid this, but really that's the spirit. Okay. Deliver fast, deliver value fast, or fail fast. Okay. But deliver value fast is better. And that, yeah. So you
Okay,
can go to.
good. Well, I love it, guys. I really appreciate you letting me interrupt. So, Andrea, just want to make a great point that, hey, there's no organization as decentralized as the Army in the sense that they, mission command. And so, anyway, maybe a
This
bad.
is this is where I say I cannot admit that I never served, even as there was a national service in France. I managed to not do it. So
Yeah,
so I would not take the army as an example of
right.
anything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. I just wanted to comment real quickly. So, Andrew, you're actually right. In some respects, the army is perhaps the most decentralized organization because when they execute, so to speak, they are units deployed into smaller pieces, et cetera. But where we're
Pods.
talking about is
Pods are agile pods.
absolutely. So in that respect, the army is extremely agile. But again, I'm going to drive the analogy. If you want to change the direction of a very big ship, it takes a long time for it to actually change. So the notion here of data mesh is in the nature of the first question related to this was where do I start and how do I change my organization? And in that sense, if your organization is very federated, in other words, decision making is down, then in all likelihood you would be able to implement something at the local level. If you want to do something that is broader change, that becomes relatively difficult where there are certain rules and obligations. So the context is actually important, and I definitely understand what you're saying, Andrea.
Yeah, and there's so many good questions. Thanks everybody for participating. Benny makes a good question about, are you really optimistic that humans or organizations, or the behavior change? Is it possible to change your habits, or do you think people will remain set in their ways despite the need for change? I don't know that you need to answer that question, but it's a good observation around behavior change in the
People change when their task is becoming easier.
yes, yeah, that I like that thought. I think that's a good thought. When you make it frictionless to do something different, then hey, there's no friction. Why wouldn't I do it this way? It's easier. Okay, so Terrace comes back with, what are the main difference between software and data products, which you observed while educating software engineers about data as a product concept and data contracts? Like, so what are some of the main differences, software and data?
Hey, can we block Taras because he's got annoying questions, really?
That's why JGP is going to answer this one.
Okay. And I'm saying that because I consider Taras a friend. Okay, so I wouldn't say that, for example, to Eric. Um, so no, but the thing is, I think there's a lot of analogy. The problem is that in software there's a lot of I think, and I may be wrong, but the thing is, in software there's a lot of assumptions. Okay, you assume that something is there, then I'm going to do something with this something. Okay, so where data is super fluid, data is really um, very difficult to tame. And I think that when you're a software engineer, you're trained of being very, very rigorous, very straightforward. And I'm not saying it's not the case for data engineers, but software is, when you're thinking about object-oriented programming, you've got to model your classes, you've got to do all these things. So it's a lot of efforts, and then the rubber hits the road, and then it all fails. And the road in this case is often data, because data is changing, schemas are changing, everything is very fluid. And that's where software learned by being agile, they could more easily adapt to these changing conditions, where I think that data is not there yet. And that's why we've got very strict data pipelines that are often breaking, because then they don't have this feedback loop in a way, or this agility built in their way of thinking.
So I just want to point out Ariel agreed with you, Jean-Georges, around this mistake, and I've made this mistake too, but of trying to define the enterprise data domains rather than focus on one successful data product and getting the right sponsorship. Eric, when you told me your story at the big insurance global company, it was the same example. You need to have trying to do the intergalactic data model or data domains. It's a it can get it isn't always effective start.
But John, this comes down a little bit to the consumer not knowing exactly what they want as well. Okay, the thing is, they want the intergalactic data because they kind of hope that they want they 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 will find something in that. Okay, it's really remind me about Ford and or the quote that was attributed to Ford, where, hey, what if we ask people, they say they want faster horses. Okay, the thing is, in this situation, it's more like we've got to bring them a mechanism where they can use it for very easily. Okay, going back to the less friction possible, and where you build in all this safeguard as well. Okay, like data governance should be built in this. Okay, and I'm not counting on people being better or just having the light bulb of data quality or something. You've got to bring it. You've got to have expert systems that are doing that. Not too long ago, I did a hackathon with a couple of friends where we run data contracts. Okay, the Beetle version of data contracts, or DCS. Okay, so and we just gave them to LLMs to generate recommendation, to generate more data quality rules based on what they see, and the LLMs can actually understand that pretty well. Um, so that's the next generation. That's the next part of modern data engineering. Okay, using AI to complement the data engineers, to complement the consumers in what they expect, in what they guide, and learning from that, adding SLAs, adding data QoS, etc. So yeah.
Yeah, no, good point. I see there is a really uh, another great question from Robin, and uh, they say, I'm so happy about socio-technical models like data mesh, coupling the org and the tech part. Great. But could you elaborate a bit more on how data mesh can push Agile to organizations, and many of them are true, have already failed in Agile before? Like you were pointing out at the beginning, Agile in a lot of ways is misunderstood, or, I think you gave the example. So, um, how elaborate a bit more on how data mesh might push organizations that actually failed at Agile before.
Sure. I think let's just start with the first part of the question, where organizations have failed with Agile. And this is what I see, my personal experience is Agile was all about speed. It's about decentralized decision making, smaller units of delivery. What ended up happening, and I see this all the time, is folks have forgotten those basic principles. Now what we have is a fair amount of process around the stuff, and the actual goal of delivering stuff in smaller stuff in shorter units gets taken over by the overwhelming software delivery process. In other words, we've engineered far too much process to the point where this agile stuff is not agile anymore. In fact, it's more or less the same as it was before, maybe worse. Now, how do you bring agile to an organization where agile has failed? Bottom line here, and I think this is a general statement, but success begets success. If you can deliver your first, I said this earlier, if you can deliver your very first data product, then you've got literally half of your problem solved because you've delivered something with real value, A. B, you have a sponsor who can tell you, a business sponsor, not a technical person, a sponsor that says, I got this value sooner than I would have otherwise got it. I love this stuff. I'm a data mesh proponent. And you start small and you build incrementally. This is a sprint, or sorry, a marathon, not a sprint. What this means is that you have to actually start small and build on your success. But what I have found is if you are careful in the early stages and build a few successful data products, you will have a set of sponsors that are unstoppable. And that's the way you change these things. Last comment is if you do data mesh and you introduce, and you build data products, hopefully at scale, if you start to introduce overwhelming process demands on that, you may actually negate the benefits you've had before. So always focus on the agility, and with agility comes obviously speed, but also with speed comes lower costs and rapid time to market, rapid business realization. After all, that's why we're doing it, right?
So much is true in what you just said. Show me a successful data product and I can transform an organization. I like that thread. We're almost out of time, but Ariel asked another key question that always comes up. Due to financial constraints, financing data products, data mesh is a challenge. I've been looking at promoting a chargeback model to distribute the costs of dev and run. What's your view on financing the strategy for data products?
It's kind of funny. I had this discussion a little bit this morning on LinkedIn, um, and there's a provision in ODCS, in the Open Data Contract Standard, for pricing, and I think it's really it's really it's in these conditions, the data contract is an enabler, okay, where it actually allows you to put in place this chargeback model or showback. Okay, you can choose, but at least I think it can show. One of the biggest problem is I found was to how do we incentivize the data producer to share its data? Okay, data producer usually their responsibility is to make that an organizational system is running, right? An order system, a warehouse system, and now someone is coming and say, "Hey, I want your data," and it's very easy for them to say, "Well, I'm going to show you the middle finger before I'm showing you my data." But the thing is, it's also how do we reward the guy, because it's just not it's not just his job, okay? And the thing is, so so that's one way to do it, because it's often not a KPI on his job as well, or it's not. So having this chargeback model can actually turn him into a profit center rather than a cost center, and he can actually charge for the data is producing, and then attribute some value to it. And whether it's just a real cost, okay, or a fictitious amount, it's something. Okay, it's something. Of course, the closer it is to the cost, the better it is. But we've got to change a little bit this mentality, okay? And the thing is, because otherwise it's a little bit. I think it's a lot of that is a little bit too easy as well to say to people, hey, just just get take the data where it is, okay? So I think that needs to change. So that's one way to justify the cost and optimize the cost of your data platform. Um, but there's, I had many experience, but the thing, one of the experience when at PayPal was that there were some people were tired of getting fined because when you do stupid things with data or you're not careful enough, that's what happens. Okay, and there was no breach. It just I'm not even going to the breach thing. Okay, but data not being compliant or data reports not giving in time. This gives you this is fine. Okay, so this is finable. So yeah.
So,
Okay, guys, I just know there's 1 minute left.
Ouch.
so, so
So
I'll give you that. Go
I
ahead, John.
want to make sure that everybody knows the next session's in a week from today. Same three folks having a conversation about implementing data mesh at scale. We'll talk about the architecture components. Yeah, here's the book. What I found, anybody that's like, I like getting hardcover books, but I did the
I
Orion,
can
and
get this one too.
I'm not advertising for Orion, but their subscription service is great because you get all of their books in one place, and so advocating that. Eric, you good? Or
I'm good. I just want to very quickly say thank you to John for being the moderator, as well as one of our tech reviewers who kept us honest, and for being a friend to host this. So thank you very much, John, for your wonderful assistance. And it's always entertaining to be on a call with JGP. I love it every time.
I know, and if people have questions, come to the next session. Let's have some more fun and keep it going.
Yeah, and connect with us on LinkedIn.
Yes, yeah, sure.
All right, great session, guys. Yeah, like John said, make sure to catch us next week, and then 2 weeks from then, we'll be back with another talk with exciting talk with John, Eric, and Jean-Georges. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye bye.
Have a
Thanks,
great day.
everybody.